Another culture conversation. Academics don't get the culture, G Malone tells DJ Academics Drake ain't culture. He grew up in an upper class neighborhood in Canada with a white Jewish mother. That's why he lost against Kendrick. He's Madonna if he was in hip hop. Then Ack says, how is Eminem and 21 Savage culture, but Drake ain't? I mean, I think you guys already know my opinions on culture. I'll get to that later. I'm gonna let that guy Academics cook right now, though.
First, though, Euphoria was where Kendrick laid it out and basically says, I'm what the culture is feeling. He basically said, I am something that you could never be, and that is exactly why you could never beat me. This was never about rapping ability. This was about...
But that's never what's going... Because hip-hop ain't about rapping ability. Hip-hop is about culture.
That's not true. That's not true. In certain situations,
it is.
Yeah, in certain situations,
it's only been about the act, and this is what I'm trying to tell you. This is what you don't get, and this is at the core of it in the Bronx and New York. It's about culture. Okay. It's not about rapping ability, Act. This ain't...
Now with everything.
Now with everything. Papoose happened number one.
Jay-Z and Nas. Jay-Z and Nas. I don't think that wasn't as much as about culture as about...
I'm just saying.
A lot of rapping and song making. Right? Like
it's about culture, Act. It's about culture.
But both guys check
it's about the lingo you use, how you present yourself, Act. That's what hip hop is about. Anybody can rap. Post Malone raps. Anybody can rap, Act. It's about culture, cuz. That's
it's only about culture.
That's why listen, Act. The reason you so big, Act, is because you covered Chicago culture. Okay. Not no fucking rap. You covered the culture. And then the rap scene was born out of it. It's the culture, Act. Your career is due to that Chicago culture. That whole culture, that get down that you educated the rest of the country on.
Chicago birth.
Wait. Hold on, though.
You got
Glasses.
this wrong.
All right, Glasses. Here's the thing, though. This is a very, I think this is going to be a popular view. That was always Drake's weakness. He's from Toronto. You could always have that be like, hey, you're not from where we're from. You didn't grow up.
But it's not because it's not because he's from Toronto. It's because he's a Jewish man from the suburbs.
Okay, all right. And by the way, you know what I said? I said if
so it seems G Malone is describing culture as, are you black or not? Did you grow up like us black people?
If we had Kendrick that went at let's say a Future or even a Meek Mill, like granted, I know he's more clever and wittier than those guys, but he couldn't use that angle. So the angle that he used against
Drake, crazy as fuck.
You
crazy.
You can't use culture against
Future, bro. The way you be crashing on Meek for his lack of cultural relevance.
No. I crash on Meek for his lack of intelligence, but Meek, Future, they're from the same culture that even if it's from a different side, Kendrick couldn't have used culture against them. He would just have to out-rap them and outsmart them. I'm not saying he wouldn't have won. But the glaring thing with Drake that was easy is, Glasses said it, yo, you're the Jewish guy. That at the end of the day, somebody would, I know Ross is kind of ancillary to this.
That's not hip-hop, Ack. He's just not hip-hop.
But that's not fair, though. How is he?
Yeah, I would say, how is Drake? See, now G Malone is delving into a side of this that I often have debates about. You guys know, you guys have probably had debates with me in the past. I understand people separating black culture, the black experience. I'm just using terms that people have used in debates against me. I'm trying to represent their side. There's the black experience, which is black culture, and then there's hip hop culture. Now, hip hop culture is just one part of black culture. But I don't think, like, I personally, this is just me. Again, everyone seems to have a different definition of culture, and we'll get to that later in the video. I don't think it's necessary to be a part of black culture to be a part of hip hop culture. I think you can be in hip hop culture without being black. I think you can be a part of hip hop without being black. So
he's not hip hop. Do you really think he's not hip hop?
Like, I wouldn't say Drake is not hip hop. Drake is clearly hip hop. Like, he's a part of hip hop culture, and he's black. He's a black man. Like,
just listen. Yes, hip hop is street urban culture personified through them arts and elements. He's not.
He said, okay, so I'm glad you defined it. A lot of people use the word culture, they don't define it. He says hip hop is street urban culture. So if you're, for the audience, for the commenters, G Malone says hip hop is street urban culture. So by what he's saying, if you're black, but you're from the suburbs is like the opposite of urban. But if you're black and you're into hip hop, technically, according to his definition, the way he just defined it, street urban culture, then you are not from the culture. See, all this not from the culture stuff, I just find it stupid. Because it's, the word culture is like redefined. Everyone has their own, and I know you guys are in the comments, you guys are probably typing, and I want you to. Everyone's going to type a different definition to culture when culture already has a definition based in anthropology. Everyone's going to type their own separate definition. But if you're, so G Malone's definition, I'm pretty sure this is G Malone speaking. So if you're black and you're from the suburbs, but you're into hip hop, like your parents listen to hip hop, you know, which a lot of black people, that's not even the case. Especially black people who are like 30s and 40s, they weren't even allowed to listen to hip hop. A good chunk, I won't say majority or anything, but there's a large chunk of black people who growing up, they were not even allowed to listen to hip hop. So if you're that black kid in the suburbs, your parents listen to hip hop, you listen to hip hop, you know hip hop, you're knowledgeable in hip hop. According to G. Malone's definition, street urban culture, is that person from the culture?
At the end of the day, somebody would, I know Ross is kind of ancillary to
That's
this.
not hip hop, He's just not hip hop.
But that's not fair, though. How is he not hip hop? Do you really think
Because
he's not hip hop?
Street urban culture. Just listen. Yes, hip hop is street urban culture personified through them arts and elements. He's not. He's a pop artist. He covers music like a pop artist. He's Madonna as a rapper. He does the exact same thing, the same thing. One week he'll have a low rider under the Bay Bridge and he's a West Coast artist. Next week he's a New York artist and he started from the bottom, even though he started from a middle class community. It's just different. Next week he's like, what the fuck, like Atlanta niggas. He's a pop artist. He just makes really great rap songs and he's a nice MC, but he's not a hip hop artist. That's why he was always destined to lose this battle.
So Drake is not a hip hop artist. I mean, I would just disagree with this. When you especially listen to Drake's earlier music, Drake was a backpack rapper. I mean, that's the same as Kanye was. Like Drake, same as Kid Cudi. Drake is from that Kanye family tree. There's Cudi, there's Drake, there's Lupe. Like Drake is from that same family tree. So I wouldn't say that Drake is not a hip hop artist. He makes pop music, yes, but even though Drake has popularized or repopularized singing and rap, he's still rapping. He's a rapper. He's a hip hop artist.
You was never going to beat this person who was so tied into culture. And outside of that is an unbelievably talented artist himself. Y'all don't get that because y'all think if somebody could rap good, they hip hop. That don't make you hip hop.
No.
You covering hip hop don't make you hip hop.
If Kendrick was from New York, they would have fucking, this would be a whole other conversation.
Oh, for sure.
They would be rallying around that shit like it was crazy.
No.
Hip hop before it was rapping act.
I'm agreeing
rapping
with you.
and starting rapping act. Hip hop had people dancing first. They had music first.
Graffiti
DJ.
first.
Hold on.
Rapping was the last thing. Act.
Hey, by the way, I'm agreeing with you.
Dancing hot like bling.
Hold on, I'm agreeing with you. Here's my only issue with that, right? Because by the way, I do think this was a Drake specific thing. My thing is that I believe the culture had co-opted and adopted Drake to be hip hop, and Kendrick just came out of the blue and said, "No, he ain't." Because I ain't gonna lie to you.
But they didn't accept him. Act. He understood
From
the value of
2013,
it.
from
Like
2013
you
to
understand the
2020.
value of it.
Wait.
He understands the value of it. So
Wait,
they
hold
didn't
on.
co-opt him. They just enjoyed. They just made records with somebody who could get bigger budgets and was a great talent. That don't make him the culture. You can't play this. This is real. So it's different. Act. It ain't like all the rest of this shit. This ain't just rap. This shit real. So,
And according to G. Malone, in order to be a part of the culture, this is street, urban. Those are the two elements you need. Street and urban.
they never adopted him. He just was somebody that people like to do music with. He was a talented artist. But real fast, when that battle happened, you seen exactly how uncultured he was.
Hey, by the
You
way-
see all the dumbass shit he was saying. You
by the
can,
way,
you can see it right now. You see him suing the company over losing the battle. You see him putting out stuff talking about
People
this
sue
man.
companies all the time.
Yeah, people sue people all the time. I speak on my channel about how Lord Finesse, like no one's gonna say Lord Finesse is not from the culture. Lord Finesse did like the most unhip hop thing. Lord Finesse ended the mixtape era when people was rapping over each other's beats. No one ever points this out, but this is my opinion though. Lord Finesse, no one's gonna say he's not from the culture. He's a hip hop legend, and he sued someone y'all would say, right, is not from the culture, Mac Miller. I love Mac Miller's music, but I mean, according to, not y'all have your own definition, but according to y'all, Mac Miller is not a part of the hip hop culture. Let me stop saying y'all. According to a lot of people's definition of culture, right? Black experience or street or urban, Mac Miller was none of that, right? Lord Finesse did the most unhip hop thing. Mac Miller rapped over Hip to the Game.
I'm hip to the game. I'll always be the same.
I'm hip to the game. Right, he rapped over it on that song Kool-Aid and Frozen Pizza.
Kool-Aid and frozen pizza. It's the work of art. I ain't talking Mona Lisa.
I mean, this is a free mixtape. Lord Finesse sued Mac Miller successfully for using his beat. After that, people really stopped rapping over each other's beats. Like that kind of ended the mixtape era. Like the whole mixtape jumping on each other's beats and having all that kind of died out because it's like there's precedent for someone to sue me over this. So I would ask G Malone. I do think Drake suing Kendrick is, I've done videos on it. Like Drake is trying to dress it up as like, yo, UMG, they're trying to help him out because my contract renegotiations and all this. No. You're suing UMG because Not Lycos was a banger and you couldn't come back from that. That's just what it is. Because UMG, I'm sure, has helped Drake many times. So, but if the suing aspect is what makes him not hip hop, what do y'all feel about Lord Finesse? I never see anybody talk about this Lord Finesse thing.
This was somebody that people like to do music with. He was a talented artist. But real fast, when that battle happened, you've seen exactly how uncultured he was.
Hey, by the
you
way,
see all the dumbass shit he was saying. You can see it right now. You see him suing the company over losing the battle. You see him putting out stuff talking about this man's personal business.
I agree with
you.
No,
got you acting weird.
Yeah, I agree with you to a certain extent, but here's the thing. Like, you're trying to overcomplicate it and try to make it. No. If Drake was a black man from the hood, it don't matter if.
I do feel like people, like when it comes to culture, like I do feel act on this. People like add so much and it's super overcomplicated and we're using all different definitions, but they all tie into each other. I just don't think it's that difficult.
If you're culturally in tune, because I could mention certain black men from the hood who are ignorant as shit. Doesn't mean they're cultural, unless you're saying black culture is ignorance. And what Kendrick said, and his angle towards Drake would not work towards them. The reality.
Yeah, I haven't said it like that, but I've just, again, in my live streams, we live stream Fridays at 7 p.m. Come join us. You guys can come talk crazy to me. It's fine. I've said before, what about a black person who is from the streets, who is from urban culture, who doesn't know anything about rap, about hip hop, any of the 4 pillars of hip hop, DJing, MCing, breakdancing, graffiti? Is he from the culture? Because he's from street and urban culture. Yeah. This is why I separate, there's black culture and there's hip hop culture, and you can be a part of one, but not necessarily a part of the other.
That Drake is just a half black guy, and that was always going to be a vulnerability.
Eminem is culture.
Hold up, Drake
he's not black at all.
He's not a half black man. Drake is a black man. He's a brother. He's not a half black man. That's a brother. He was raised.
But
as
you mentioned about him being Jewish. Like these things wouldn't matter if we're talking to a black man.
I agree.
You miss it. That's not true. It's not because he's from Toronto. It's because he's a Jewish man from the suburbs.
Okay.
Because being black is more of a racial epithet to reflect different things. It's reflecting something else. Like it's just different. Right, but what I'm saying to you is you're talking about culture. Hip hop is culture, and everybody black don't live the same way. That's why I keep using the term street urban culture.
Yeah, so I was gonna say if everybody black doesn't live the same way, then how is hip hop? How can you define it as street urban culture? Because there are black people who know hip hop and who are raised in hip hop, but who are not from the streets and are not from urban areas.
Different people. The Beastie Boys grew up Jewish, if I remember correctly. There's people who grew up in street urban culture. He just didn't.
Okay.
He don't speak slang. You talk to this nigga. He don't speak slang. He don't talk the way we talk. Nothing about him is nothing from no ghetto. Nothing about his culture. And it ain't like everybody from hip hop is from the ghetto.
If Drake
just
was not
culture.
So I'm gonna just keep doing these like little semantics things. What about someone who grew up in a super nice part of LA around whites and like whitewashed Hispanics, and they don't speak slang either? Are they from the culture? I just think the whole from the culture and all this culture, it's just, I don't inherently have an issue with the term culture because I don't have an issue with it, but I hate how it's weaponized. And you can see G Malone is weaponizing it here to say Drake isn't from it. Oh, but Drake's from it, but then Eminem's not from it.
He is a middle-class man. He's like a fucking attorney who just turns on the mic and becomes a nigga.
Yo, I guarantee if this is a dream world. I guarantee if the angle that Kendrick went with, if he tried to say anything to Future would just tell him shut the fuck up and nobody would care because he wouldn't hit. Drake
Future the one that let him do it.
He
the one kicked off.
But he
said that motherfucker.
If he was battling Future, he wouldn't have said the same thing.
When Dodge took verse and got it every day, niggas ain't say nothing then.
So y'all agree
when it comes down to lyrical ability, when it comes down to really sitting there being strategic, when it comes to the essence of hip hop, that's what Kendrick is. He's studying.
What they just said earlier that it's not about rapping ability.
Never was going because hip hop ain't about rapping ability. Hip hop is about culture.
And that sounds like AD. I don't know if that's AD. When he says when it comes down to lyrical ability, with like the essence of hip hop, then Kendrick is the culture. Like again, I'm not confused on what culture means. I'm just so confused on how people use it. But I could have an outdated definition. My definition is something I learned in the class in anthropology. I could be using an outdated definition, which is fine. I mean, I am open to updating my thoughts.
So I agree with you. He couldn't use the same thing with Future, but the problem is he couldn't use it. Couldn't do that to him.
All right, so Drake's Achilles heel is that he's a half black, half white person who is Jewish from Toronto, who may have not grown up in the hood.
He is not Drake Achilles heel is he's a fraud.
Okay, explain that. Okay,
there we
explain
go.
that. No, explain
now
that.
We're here.
You got to break this one down, brother.
No, he's not of anything culture. Everything is just a different level of culture that he uses to make music. He's not of any of those cultures. But one.
Okay, I can understand what he's saying there. Like Drake will make like the one dance type Afro beats. He's not from that culture. Then he goes down south. He makes the screwed up music like November. What was that song called? November 28th. He's not from that culture. I can understand what he's saying there.
One culture that he is of is Jewish culture. He don't use slang when he speaks. He speaks proper English. He's a really good guy. He's not even a bad guy. He's just not of street urban culture. So
well, I don't know Drake to say how he speaks in his personal life. Based on his interviews, I would agree. He doesn't. He seems to speak proper English, but there are plenty of full black people who are not Jewish and from Toronto. They're from America who speak proper English. So
he's been acting like he's a different street urban culture from all around the country.
Wait, because
his songs went from being really cool and making perfect sense to where he's talking about spinning the block and hurting people.
Wait, that's not true though. You say Drake knows use slang. I think Drake knows how to code switch. Wait, hold on. I think Drake knows how to code switch like many people. Like there's many people that know how to code switch, right? Like you put him in front of this.
He's not code switching, Act. He's not code switching, Act.
So you're just saying
that if you talk to him, Drake. You talk to him, Act. You talk to him. Like you are somebody like me that has talked to him. You know who this brother is in real life, and he's not a half white. He's a brother. But again, we talking about him being Negroid, his descendants from Africa, his father is from Memphis, but he is not of any of them else. That's a middle-class child actor success story, Jewish kid from Canada.
His blood is Egyptian. You heard him.
So G Malone is saying it's not even about Drake being half Jewish or half white. He's saying Drake. He's saying what a lot of people probably wouldn't say. He's saying Drake is black, like period. He's a brother. He's black, but he's saying the issue with Drake and the culture is Drake is from a middle class area in a nice city. Therefore, he cannot be from the culture because, again, he's defining culture as street urban culture. And again, I don't agree, but as long as the logic stays consistent, I'm fine. People can have, I'm already knowing people have their own definitions for what culture means. As long as your logic stays consistent, I'm completely fine with that, right?
And that's a brother. Like y'all got to stop saying half white. Stop calling that man. Ain't no white man.
By the way,
I agree with that.
And again, he's also uncultured in this land.
Hey, by the way, the reason why I reject that, and I hate to bring up somebody who I really love, to make my point, but you wouldn't say that to 21 Savage, and he grew up until like he was 9 or 10 in the UK, which even that like culture is different.
Well, to steal man G Malone's argument, and again, I don't agree with what he's saying, but to steal man his argument, he would probably say, well, 21 Savage moved here to Atlanta when he was young, and he got brought up in that culture, even though he's from a different country. He was brought up here. He speaks like us. He acts like us. He eats like us. Therefore, he is from the culture.
From what?
Hell no, them motherfuckers is crazy. What you mean? UK got hip hop.
Hold on.
Then he went to Atlanta in the ghetto. He's extra hip hop.
No. But when he
I think Act not really understand what you're saying. Meaning, like,
I do understand what he's saying. What I'm saying,
if Drake was raised by his black father, it wouldn't be a conversation. I think that's where you're missing it. Like it's not. It don't matter if it was Canada, if it was France, if it was whatever.
See what they're saying. I would agree. I follow what they're saying, but I don't agree because I don't think you need to be raised by a black person to be a part of hip hop culture. But this is where a lot of people agree with me. I think what they're saying, G Malone is saying, works perfectly if you're talking about is someone from black culture. And then, yeah, you can have a black person who was adopted by a white family and never grew up around black people. Yes, they are black, but you could question, like, are you from black culture? It's kind of like how some Africans will do black Americans. They'll say, like, how are you African? Don't call yourself African American. You don't know anything about Africa. Yeah, your skin color matches, your hair texture matches, but you don't speak our language, you don't eat our foods, you don't know anything about our culture, right? So I get what they're saying, But I would agree to what they're saying if they were applying it to strictly black culture. My differentiating factor is I don't think you need to be black to be a part of hip hop culture.
Place in England, and he from a fucked up place in Atlanta.
He's from the culture.
He's not a middle class child actor, Nickelodeon star.
See, being from a messed up place is not a prerequisite of being a part of hip hop for me, or it's not a prerequisite of being a part of black culture either.
That's playing through different people's cultures. You know the difference? That don't take away that cuz is a dope talent, but you don't gotta lie.
No, hold on.
He ain't nothing like 21. 21 is actually cultured as a motherfucker.
I'm not trying to use 20, and that's my guy when throw him on the bus. Anyway, what I was trying to say is that I really believe that y'all are just using the fact that he grew up. You're right. He grew up around his white mother, and because of that, you're kind of more penalizing him than understanding.
Yeah, I mean, but their definition simplified of being from the culture, hip hop culture, is being street and urban. So yeah, if that's what they're saying is culture to them, then yes, it tracks. Drake did not grow up like that.
And in that, there's many people within hip hop that may have had different experiences while they were growing up. The reason why I use 21 is that, hey, he grew up maybe in a different tradition. I'm not saying it's not black or nothing like that, because it clearly is. Both of his people are black. But it wasn't Atlanta, but then later it was Atlanta. Like y'all are almost using and indicting Drake for literally, like, for a part of his life, growing up with his mom and maybe like being a child actor. Like, is that like the thing? That
Wait.
Yeah, I do think it's silly. I would agree with Ak here. I would disagree with Ak if they were talking about black culture only. Yes, I mean, you would have to explain to me, what do you know about black culture if you didn't grow up in it? But hip hop culture, I don't have that same prerequisite.
D'Angelo Ball has a white mom, but he was raised by a black man. So that's the culture of what we're talking about.
Culture is not how you born. It's not an indictment. It's nothing wrong with Drake.
All right, hold on.
The only thing wrong with Drake is he's acting like a bunch of people.
And just see how convoluted this is. This is why I think the whole for the culture and weaponizing it and who's a part of it, I'll explain why I think it's stupid. I'm gonna let him cook for these last 2 minutes.
Tell me the difference. Explain, because you just brought it up. I forgot who just said it. LiAngelo Ball and Drake. Again, I'm not here sitting and saying, oh, Drake is whatever. But I do think that you guys are skirting around a main issue. The easy thing to pinpoint about Drake is that you're a half black man that grew up with your white mother, and because of that,
we didn't say that because we said Eminem was right. It's culture. He's white.
It's just white people.
Yeah, you're not getting the point.
It's culture.
It's culture.
You're just being disingenuous.
I don't think Ak is being disingenuous. I just don't think they're explaining it well enough. Or there's so many if and but it's like a derivative. Well, if this and then and or that, then maybe equals. It's like you're in Salesforce trying to create a report. It's super convoluted. I don't think Ak is being disingenuous here. I just think, and I've always thought that this conversation is super muddy when it doesn't need to be.
To pinpoint about Drake is that you're a half black man that grew up with your white mother, and because of that,
we didn't say that because we said Eminem was right. It's culture. He's white.
It's just white people.
Yeah, you're not getting the point.
It's culture.
It's culture.
You're just being disingenuous.
Well, yeah, they'll say Eminem is culture because he's from street and he's from urban. I get their point.
By the way, anytime Eminem,
do a race.
Yo, it does have. Hold on, when Eminem got into
race.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, so I would ask, because Ye said Eminem is culture. So there are plenty of people in black culture, not hip hop, but in hip hop too, who would say Eminem is a guest of the culture. He's not a part of. I would say Eminem was a part of hip hop culture. So everyone, my point is everyone has their own different definitions, obviously. And this is why these conversations often go left. We're using the same word, but everyone has like a different definition for it.
When Eminem got into back and forth skirmishes, that's the first thing they brought up about it. Boy, you a white boy. That's a fact. When he was,
and it didn't matter. And you know what?
They didn't say he wasn't the culture though.
It didn't matter.
Yeah, they say he's a
50
guest.
had to jump on Ja Rule. Like, there's a lot of shit that, like, when anybody was, even Benzine, when people start bringing up the fact that Eminem was a white guy, even though, culturally,
it didn't work.
He won. He won every time. Culture won every battle.
Culture gonna win.
But
Culture's gonna win every battle.
He didn't win it as culture. So y'all want me to believe that Eminem...
Culture's gonna win every battle. So when Eminem was going at it with Benzino, so it's Benzino. If culture's gonna win every battle, then is Benzino not from the culture? Like, again, it's just this word. It's being way too abused.
Won battles as culture versus black people? Stop playing.
No, you're missing the point. We're saying you couldn't use that against him and nobody cared because we understand he's cultured. That's the difference.
So answer my question.
There wasn't a consensus about the Eminem thing, especially when he was going at Benzino, because it had been uncovered that Eminem was making songs dissing black women, and he had said the N-word before. So it's not as cut and dry as the culture understood and the culture got behind him. Not really. Eminem is seen as the victor of that Benzino beef, largely because of Nail in the Coffin, which is the diss record.
How Drake is not culture, and Drake did so much shit into culture.
Drake is an artist. That don't make you cultured as an artist.
The sad
art is a part of culture.
part about it, everything Drake does, you guys. The sad thing is that everything you guys do, you guys put what Drake. Like, all right, okay, I get it, and you know why? Maybe I empathize or I see Drake a bit. Maybe like not. First of all, both my parents are black. My mama just came.
But you also a middle class kid that came to this country as a middle class kid. So you think it exits you out. That's not true.
No, hold on.
At this point, niggas saying that Diddy is more culture.
Wait, yo.
All right, so that's the end of that video. I will close by saying this. My definition of culture is different than theirs, than G Malone's. I'm sure yours differs from theirs. It's just way too convoluted of a conversation when it doesn't have to be. I think it's literally making a mountain out of a molehill. Culture already has a definition that's based in anthropology. I don't think you need to be black to be a part of hip hop culture. And I don't think that you have to be from the streets or from urban culture to be a part of hip hop culture. I think you could be a kid from the suburbs and be a part of hip hop culture. I think you could have never seen the streets in your life. You could have been a straight and narrow kid and then still be a part of hip hop culture. And at the end of the day, I don't really care about who's from the culture, who's a part of the culture. All this is just, it's to me, it's just stupid as it relates to hip hop. But to me, as it relates to hip hop, to me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter like that. My thing is, who knows the most about hip hop? Who knows what they're talking about? Who makes great music? Who tries to uphold hip hop culture as we know it, what to be MCing, breakdancing, graffiti, DJing. There are people in Japan, there's a whole hip hop culture in Japan, and I'm sure a lot of those kids are not necessarily from the streets or from urban culture, but you can say that at times they do a great job of upholding the culture. Now, I did a live stream the other day and someone asked me, yo, so do you think Vlad is a part of the culture? DJ Vlad. I was like, yeah. Obviously, DJ Vlad is a part of hip hop culture. Like, what are we talking about? DJ Vlad's not a part of hip hop culture. DJ Vlad, who has one of the biggest hip hop media platforms ever. DJ Vlad, who's recounted so many of our legends' stories, life stories. He's not a part of hip hop culture. DJ Vlad, the same DJ, so he's already in one of the 4 pillars of hip hop. The same DJ Vlad who released one of the most popular mixtapes of all time, that DJ Vlad, yeah. How could you say he's not a part of hip hop culture? Who cares if he didn't grow up street? Who cares if he's from the suburbs? Who cares that he's white? To me, it's about who handles the culture with care. Who cares about this enough to study it? Who cares enough about this to put time into it? Quality. Everyone's going to have their different definition of cultures. Hip hop culture, what it means. Some people would differentiate being a part of the culture versus being from the culture. Cool. I recognize that distinction. I can see why people will have a different distinction. But again, to me, it doesn't matter. Someone, for me, could be not from the culture, but if they are doing right by hip hop, I respect that more than someone who's from the culture who doesn't know shit about hip hop. I think a lot of arguments, a lot of debates, they go downhill because at the core, people are talking about different things. And then one person's debating based on what they believe that term means, and they think everyone else recognizes that term the same way they do. And then the other person is doing the same. So they're talking past each other and never getting to the point. One person described culture to me as suffering. Culture means suffering. Another person described culture as urban culture, just like G Malone did here. They described culture as urban culture. Another person here, this is from a YouTube comment, I forget which video. They say, I always act obtuse over this culture thing. I told you in that video, you mentioned that the culture just simply means Black American culture. So someone here believes that by hip hop culture, when you say the culture as it relates to hip hop, it just means American Black culture. So this disqualifies Drake, right? Because he's not American. But what if Drake was American, but he's the same guy? I mean, Jewish and half black, as some people would say. And all. So based on this guy's definition, if Drake were simply from America, let's say he's from Pennsylvania, he's from Maine, he's from Rhode Island, the whole "I'm with the culture" feeling, that couldn't be used against him because Drake is the culture. Like, the only thing Drake is missing is American. Any black American or he said, okay, or anyone of any race that was raised around majority of black Americans where their upbringing is a part of the culture. So by this definition, you know Los Angeles is like majority Hispanic. So by this definition, and I'm just showing you how easy it is to pick apart these definitions because they're not good definitions. So LA is like majority Hispanic, Southern California in general. So any black person from LA, they meet this standard, being black American, but they don't meet this standard of being raised around majority black Americans. But then he changes and says, okay, so I think he's mostly applying this to white people because Adam 22, he wasn't raised around black Americans. Paul Wall, he was. To me, as it relates to hip hop, this does not matter to me. And even if it didn't relate to hip hop, even if you're a different race, but you're raised around another race, you're a part of their culture. Like, and this doesn't even, for me, I'll only speak hip hop, right? Being raised around majority of black Americans, for me, has really nothing to do with hip hop because there are plenty of black Americans who don't listen to hip hop. My thing is, what do you know about hip hop? Do you care about it? Do you study it? Do you take care of it? So I actually want to show this video. This is Officer Tatum. Obviously, a bunch of people are going to see the MAGA hat and be like, oh my God. I mean, walk with me because I'm showing this for a reason. He's talking to this young lady. And this is kind of what I'm talking about here. I'll just let it play.
Do you think that everyone is racist?
No.
I would argue that everyone is, even myself. And if you have ever read the book Native Son by Richard Wright, it's...
Can you explain racist to me?
So this is perfect. So this is me. Officer Tatum is basically me. She says, I think everyone is racist. I need you, he said, I need you to, like, what do you mean? Because I know what racist means, based on the dictionary definition. Maybe the dictionary's wrong and you're right. Explain to me what you mean by racist before we go on. Otherwise, we're gonna be arguing, is everyone racist? But you have your own definition for racist, and I have a totally different definition for racist. And then, like, the debate never goes anywhere because we have a fundamental misunderstanding of each other.
So
having some sense of bias or some sense of negativity. It doesn't necessarily have to be.
Okay, and you can see her, I'll replay that. Her definition of racism is simply wrong. It's simply wrong. It doesn't match to any dictionary. Like, having bias does not mean you're racist.
I would argue that everyone is, even myself. And if you have ever read the book Native Son by Richard Wright, it's...
Can you explain racist to me? So I can make sure we're on the same page.
Having some sense of bias or some sense of negativity. It's not...
Now, some people will say, oh, you're missing the point. You're purposely missing the point. And in a sense, I am. It's incumbent upon the person to explain it. And if this is their definition, you know, this is like saying, and I'll end it here, if we're just redefining words, right? So if we want to redefine words and say, okay, well, we're not going off of this definition, standard definition that's been recognized for centuries, we're going to redefine it to mean culture means this, right? Or culture means urban or street or whatever you think it is. This will be like me saying 2 + 2 = 7. But by 7, my definition of 7 is 4. It's like me saying 2 + 2 = 7. But by 7, my definition of the word 7 is 1, 2, 3, 4. Therefore, I'm correct in saying 2 + 2 = 7 because 7 = 4. It's stupid. It's dumb. 4 already has a definition. 7 has a definition. If we're just going to keep redefining things based on whatever context we're in to help further our narrative, what will be the point of having any definitions of words? Racism means you have some sense of bias. Culture means this and that. So I'm happy to I'm happy to take the arrows just to open up the conversation. I think I'm really the only person who even speaks up about how just driven into the ground the word culture has gotten in hip hop in the past 2 years. So if I can open up a larger conversation to help people come back to a consensus, the same consensus that we've had on the word culture for centuries, if I can get people to at least have a conversation and come back to the consensus, that's fine with me. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Top5rapwebsite.com. Peace. The culture.